Hello, hello, Pitt fans. What is up? My name is Stephen Thompson, coming to you for another Inside Pitt postgame report. I'm live at the Peterson Event Center after the Pitt Panthers just fell 71-64 to the Missouri Tigers in the inaugural ACC-SEC Challenge. It was a complicated game, I felt like. Complicated game. Felt like there was a lot to kind of evaluate, draw from, take away. I mean, and there's a lot of ways to look at it. I mean, even just talking with my colleagues in the press box, I felt like there were for every additional person you talk to, there was an additional kind of perspective on the game in a way that they kind of thought that they lost. To that end, if you've got a theory, if you've got a comment, if you've got a question about how they did, how this game kind of unraveled, feel free to drop it in the chat. We can talk about it a little bit. But I think the biggest takeaway I have, and the first thing that my mind went to when this game ended, was that the blueprint's kind of out there. I mean, it was out there after the Florida game. I mean, Oregon State tried it a little bit, but just not very successfully. And Missouri executed it to perfection in this game. Big, older, physical teams are able to take advantage of this team. And I think we're inclined to look at the backcourt when that happens. We're inclined to look at Jalen Lowe and Bub Carrington, two young guys that are still kind of finding their footing in college basketball. But I think this affected the entire team, and I think it was something that Missouri was able to do to all of Pitt, not just the backcourt. I mean, you'll look at the numbers, and they look rough for the backcourt. I mean, Carrington 4 of 14, 1 of 7 from three. Ish Leggett 1 of 8 from the field, 0-5 from three. And Jalen Lowe only 1 shot, 2 free throws. Didn't have an assist. Committed 2 turnovers. Carrington also 4 assists, 3 turnovers. Leggett 3 assists, 6 turnovers. That is very uncharacteristic from him. It was a full team thing. I don't think you can just point to youth, even though that is part of it. This was a kind of full team effort when you think about how this Pitt team kind of wilted in the face of some physicality, of some pressure, of a team that kind of knew what they were doing and knew how to attack them. I mean, Dennis Gates and the head coach of Missouri and Sean East, I believe that's his name. Yeah, Sean East II, told us in the postgame that they saw this on film. If you were physical with these guys, if you bumped them a little bit, if you took them out of their rhythm, they don't do very well against it. He's talking specifically about the freshmen there, but like I said, it really applies to everyone, and I think I'll get to that in a second, a little later. But just from kind of a 30,000-foot view, it's pretty obvious what you got to do to beat this Pitt team right now. You got to be physical with their guards. You got to have some good bigs, have some strong bigs and some size. You have to put pressure on them all the way up and down the court for the entire game, and you got to be deep. I mean, this Missouri team, I think they went as many as 12 deep. Let me see, 1, 2. I know they went 12 deep in the first half. They might have added one more guy in there in the second half to maybe make it 13, but they were able to send waves and waves and waves of strong dudes. I mean, there's some size. I mean, they have some size. I mean, especially 7'4", 7'5", Connor Vanover. He was a huge factor in this game. 7 rebounds, 3 of them offensive, just 6 points. But you just felt like he was such a factor, keeping them out of the paint, offensive rebounding, things like that. But they just threw waves and waves of guys at Pitt, and they were able to keep up that full court pressure for the entire game because of the kind of pressure that they put on Pitt, or because of the depth that they had, that they felt comfortable with, reaching so far into their bench and pulling out just guys to just hound Carrington, Leggett, Lowe. It was, once they were able to do that, they were able to pressure them in the backcourt. They sped up the offense. That was a word that Jeff Capel used after Florida. They forced him into some bad decisions. And ultimately, I don't know, Pitt should have been able to survive this. For as much as they got rushed and as much as the pressure kind of affected them on offense, I felt like they were still, at the end of the day, able to get good shots out of it. You don't like 11 turnovers. That's not a good number. I mean, it's fine, but I don't think you love that. But I mean, Pitt shot 7 of 25 from three. I felt like the vast majority of those were wide open. Like, to borrow a word from Capel in the postgame, naked, just no one around him. And they just clanged him. And one thing that, I think there is something to just having an off shooting night, but I think Dennis Gates pointed something out really kind of astutely in the postgame, which was that Pitt, when they struggled to score, looked for contact. And it seemed like for a while they were playing through that contact really well. They were drawing fouls. They were getting to the line. They were still scoring despite field goals not necessarily going into the hoop. But what Gates said was that when you force a team like that, a team that has scored 100 points in a couple games for a team that's averaging, I want to say, north of 80 points per game this season, when you force them to make free throws and get their points at the line instead of watching the ball go through the hoop on easy transition opportunities or watching them hit a bunch of threes, I mean, that's different. You take them out of your rhythm. You take a good offensive team out of their rhythm when you force them to make free throws instead of getting looks, getting their points the old-fashioned way. I think it was pretty true. I mean, Pitt survived this physicality, I want to say, for a little bit, but not for the entire game. It clearly wore them down. It clearly made them more unsure of themselves at certain points, and made them, I don't know, it just roughed them up and it took them out of their rhythm, like Gates said, and just took any kind of offensive flow out of this game. I mean, 8 assists in total on 16 made field goals. That's not good enough. And it is kind of the culmination of a lot of things. It is the culmination of both of Missouri's pressure, but also Pitt's inability to kind of be mentally tough for the entire game and keep doing the things that they need to do, despite some frustrations. I think you also saw, in addition to kind of shots not falling, you saw something that happened in the Florida game as well, which was guys going one-on-one saying, I need to make a play. I need to be the guy who does all these things for this team if we're going to win. And that's just didn't work. I mean, especially because, like I said, the bench didn't really give much either. I mean, this was as far as offense goes, this was pretty much the Blake Hinson show. And then it was guys getting to the free throw line, but just nothing came easy, and the Panthers didn't respond in that way. And they didn't do the little things, I thought, that has helped them survive. This isn't the first shooting slump that this team has had under Jeff Capel this season. Any way you want to slice it. But they've survived shooting slumps like this before, but they've done it with their defense. They've rebounded, they've gotten out in transition, and that's how they've overcome some offensive struggles. They didn't do that this time. They just weren't able to. They weren't able to get enough stops. Towards the end of the game, you could really feel, like I mentioned, Vanover, 7'5", a ton of weight on him. But, Pitt was going for steals a lot. They were trying to pressure the guards, make some transition opportunities and some quick shots. But when they sent double teams, when they had guards trapped, they would literally just throw it up towards the rim. And a 7'5" guy was there for a lob or a layup, or to help bail them out of that. So, I mean, and then they, even when they didn't pressure, I mean, I don't think they defended the 3-point line particularly well. Missouri shot 36% from 3. They didn't make a ton necessarily, didn't shoot a ton, but they were all backbreakers. And it felt like every time Panthers did come up with some big stops, because they did have kind of a spirited comeback in the final few minutes that just kind of fell short. But every time they came up with a big shot of their own, Missouri was right there with an easy dunk, a 3-pointer kind of pulled out of their rear end at the end of the shot clock. Missouri just looked like a team that was older, that had been there, that had survived some of these challenges before, and Pitt is not. I think the silver lining from this is that you can look at the physicality component, and you can understand that Pitt's a little young. It's something we're going to have to talk about a lot this year, is just how they respond to seeing challenges for the first time. And this isn't the first time they've seen this challenge, but I mean, Blake Hinson said in the postgame that, you think about Carrington, you think about Lowe, those guys aren't struggling. They're learning is the phrase he used. It's something that you're maybe going to have to live with. I mean, this is an ugly loss, a frustrating loss, not one that you want to suffer. I feel like Pitt is maybe the more talented team of these two. I felt like, Pitt was maybe, the more talented team, but they didn't play like it. You didn't earn that win. And the task now is to kind of grow up quickly, because the road doesn't get any easier. You've got Clemson coming up this weekend, then you got a trip to West Virginia, and then you get a few more mid-majors, and then you're right in the thick of ACC play. So the blueprint is out there. Teams know how to beat Pitt. I mean, Shawnee said it very plainly that they saw on film Pitt struggles with physicality, and that is something that teams are going to continue to try to expose until Pitt proves that teams can't do that. So something they got to learn from. I mean, they said it over and over. Capel and Hinson said in their post game. It's just that this is a learning experience. Thing is, right now it's just a loss. It doesn't become a learning experience until you've proven that you've learned from it and you respond in the next game and you do things differently and you survive the contact a little bit better. You learn how to play through contact instead of trying to go around it. I feel like that's what this really boils down to, is that Pitt tried to go around contact. They tried to go around physicality, and that's just not going to work. It was kind of my big spiel, my big kind of takeaway from the evening. But got a couple other notes here, things that I just want to touch on pretty briefly. But Blake Hinson, he's that guy, man. Like, he is turning into everything I think that the Panthers had kind of envisioned for him. I think he pulled them out of really bad spots and made this game a lot closer, almost single-handedly, than it probably should have been. I think you look at the final few minutes, and just the offense simply became, let's get Blake the ball at the top of the key, see what he can do. It's interesting that he was able to take guys off the dribble as well as he was, drawing fouls, creating some different looks, creating looks for other guys. Like, it wasn't, he's showing that he's different from last year. He's showing that he is a different player, that he has a different skill set, that he has improved. And that's an encouraging thing, because I don't think Blake last year, I think Blake shot them out of some bad spots and hit some clutch shots, but he was doing it off of other guys. He was doing it when, Nelly or Nike Sabandi or Jamarius Burton were driving and kicking out to get him those looks. This year, he's kind of creating a lot of looks for himself, which is different, which is notable. And it really served them well in this game, although they did kind of come up short. The bigs, not very good. Just kind of as a unit, Fetty is way too weak, I guess is the word I can come up with around the rim for this point in his career. This is a guy who's supposed to be strong, physical, athletic. That is what he really did last year to earn a starting spot, to take over a starting spot and really become one of the bigger impact defenders in the ACC, if not the country last year. I just haven't seen that same kind of Fetty this year. It just simply put, I mean, he doesn't go up to the rim strong. He doesn't rebound strong. He relies a lot on his height and his length, instead of, I think good technique as far as boxing out or playing with some force around the rim, and that's a problem. I felt like Guillermo Diaz-Graham was really the only center, kind of traditional post big man who gave Pitt much of anything today. And it was weird because he had a really fantastic stretch in the first half. It was I believe he sparked a 11-3 run is what it turned into. He made an and one layup, I think, about a few minutes after he checked into the game. He had an offensive rebound during this stretch, that first shift as well. Made an and one layup, made his free throw. It went from a 2-point lead for Missouri to a 1-point lead for Pitt around the 11:25 mark. And then he made another dunk, I believe, off of an offensive rebound about a minute later. And then he gets subbed out. And he doesn't play again until the minute 12 mark. And I didn't really understand that. Felt like he was kind of a spark plug. I felt like he had a real good feel for the game. I felt like he was doing good things defensively. And I felt like he was one of the few guys really, at least on this night, ready for the challenge that a guy like I'm going to shouldn't forget him. He's 7'5". I should not, but Connor Vanover, that the challenge that he was able to present, just physically. I've touched on it. Fetty was not really up to the challenge tonight. It seemed like Guillermo was, and they used him a bit more in the second half, but I just don't kind of understand why he was kept on the bench for so long. I mean, he only played 6 minutes tonight. I mean, perhaps, that illness that he was dealing with in New York is still kind of, is still bugging him, but I felt like he deserved Excuse me. No, so that 6-minute number is wrong. That's for the first half. He ended up playing only 16 minutes. So he only played 10 minutes in the second half. I still think that's way too few for a guy who was one of the few who was being really active defensively and doing a lot of good things around the rim for a Pitt team that really needed it. I had a question here. We'll take it. Steven, does this game signal troubling issues offensively for Pitt, or is it more a fluke with how poor they shot? I kind of fall in the camp that this is not necessarily a super troubling thing for Pitt. I think despite all the issues with physicality that I mentioned, they still got a ton of open looks offensively. Like I said, I mean, it was just naked shots not going in. I think the issue that you would point out from there, that I would leap to from there, is that they let not making shots affect every other part of their game. Would let it deflate them. And I think that's the troubling issue. It's not necessarily about the process offensively or, the kind of looks they were getting or the decisions that they made offensively in my book. I think it was how they let that affect the rest of their game. Just kind of hanging your head defensively, trying to play hero ball after shots aren't going down. Not hitting the glass as hard. I felt like they let not making shots deflate them. And that's the real issue for me. I think they generally run good offense and get good shots. I think they have guys who can create shots. I just think they fell into a sense of not panic. I just felt like defeat, when wide open 3-pointers weren't going down, when I don't remember what their final number on layups was, but there was a point in the second half where they were, I think 3 of 11 shooting layups. Yeah, they finished 3 of 11 shooting layups. They just didn't attack the rim when shots started not to fall, and felt like they had to shoot jumpers to get themselves back in the game. So I'd say it was the response to missing shots that really kind of dragged them down. Was not necessarily anything not necessarily how they ran their offense, but it was, I think, just the response to shots not falling. And I think that goes along with kind of the toughness element that we touched on at the beginning of the show. It's just that they let a couple things not go in their way really spiral and snowball into something much worse. Appreciate that question. If anyone's got any more, feel free to throw them in the chat. Like I said, this is the first time that they were out rebounded all year. I felt like that was a big element as well. I mean, Blake Hinson talked about it in the post game that, what do you do when shots aren't falling, when field goals aren't going through the hoop? Needs to get out in transition. That's the biggest thing. That's something we talked about, is just that was one of the ways the Panthers created really easy offense and created a lot of great looks for themselves in the first few games of the season, was to get out in transition, to run, to turn their defense into offense. And you can really only do that if you defensive rebound. I mean, you can play as good a defense as you want, but if you are not finishing off possessions with defensive rebounds, then you might as well have not played good defense for 30 seconds or however long you did. Pitt was mostly getting killed on the offensive rebounds that led to them getting out rebounded. But I mean, for a team like Pitt, on a night like tonight, you have to be able to defensive rebound by a better margin than they did. I mean, they got beat 25-24 on defensive rebounds, but for a team like Pitt to really create offense and to really find ways to score when the ball isn't going through the hoop, you've got to be able to defensive rebound and rebound in general at a better rate than that to kind of overcome shooting woes like that. It was 6-5 in fast break points. I mean, you shoot what was it? If you shoot 34% from the field, 28% from 3, and you can't create offense in transition, then you kind of have no hope. And that's kind of the game right there. You can do everything else, but if you're not creating easy opportunities from yourself, you're never going to just shoot yourself out of a slump. That's just kind of not really how basketball works. Lots to take away. I felt like this was a simultaneously wasn't encouraging, but I don't think it was as big a disaster, I think, as we're kind of led to believe. I thought Pitt was the better team going into this game. They clearly didn't play like it. And they've got a lot to work on, and luckily a lot of time to work on it before they welcome a Clemson team that's really talented, maybe not playing up to their standard to this point in the season, but certainly very talented and has some guys who are proven players at this level of college basketball. So appreciate y'all tuning into the live post game show. We'll have another one after the Clemson game. So make sure you tune into that one. Appreciate everyone's questions and everyone who tuned into this one. Make sure to like this video, subscribe to us on YouTube. That's youtube.com/@InsideThePanthers. Find all our reporting from this game and the rest of the season to follow. Plus, we got a ton of football news that has come out. Even just today, the offseason is barely 3 days old, and we've still got plenty of news coming out of that program. So make sure you're tuned in and staying current with all your Inside the Panthers news and notes. And stay tuned to this channel for another post-game report and more Pitt content later this week. Appreciate you all tuning in, like I said, and I'll see you next time.